Mikey, what have you been playing apart from
I've played whilst
being
poorly.
sick?
Yeah. Dying Light 2. I finally bought it. So I've been saying ever since its release, I was like, I really want to play this because I really like the original game, and I said I'm not going to buy it unless it's less than £30. And at one point, the Steam sale got it down to like £30 and 24 pence, and I just went, nope, not. But then it was $29.99. I was like, yep, why not? And so yeah, it's very interesting. So for those who don't know, Dying Light or Dying Light 2 are both open world parkour zombie things, and you've got this.
Parkour zombies sound terrifying.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there's a lot to not like about the second version. And it's interesting because it's far more accessible. The first version of Dying Light, nighttime, you just didn't do it unless you were proper hardcore. Nighttime's pretty easy in Dying Light 2. But there are a couple of things that really opened my eyes, because one of my complaints about Oblivion back in the day was the fact that everything leveled up with you, so you never felt truly powerful. Everything around you was always the same sort of challenge level, which I get. It keeps the game progressive, keeps you challenged. I got to this point in Dying Light 2, and I did it in Shadow of Mordor as well. I tend to explore these open worlds, and I do the side quests. So I was leveling up much higher than the level of any of the actual main quest. So I got to this point where you'd enter like part of the game. You have to pick up these things called inhibitors, and they basically increase your stats, and then you can unlock things and upgrade your abilities.
Inhibitors unlock your inhibitions.
Yeah, basically, so you could do more. Why not? It makes you more immune to the virus because you have it and everything else. So, and there's these zones called quarantine zones that you can go into at night to gather more inhibitors. And there's also what they call a GRE anomaly, which is like a super zombie that looks like a complete mess. You don't want to mess with it. And when you enter the zone at night where you've got to fight them, suddenly the boss battle music comes on. No, that's Doctor Who. But it comes on. But I'd already unlocked one of the highest level weapons in the game, which actually levels up damage with you, a crossbow. So I would paraglide into this danger zone, land, and it'd go dun 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 dun, and I'd just go pew, and it would go and I was like, no, well, that's
the
challenging.
sound effects that really make that game, I have to say.
But I was like, this is supposed to be challenging. This is the one part of the game that they should level up with you, so it's always a challenge. No. And so, unfortunately, I was fully leveled about halfway through the game. And
I mean, you and I have spoken about this before. My theory that we should stop using levels
yeah,
in game design, because there are other ways of making the decision interesting and having progression. Like you've unlocked a certain number of skills, items, whatever it is, but you can only carry so many. So use whatever combination you want, but
yeah, and I've got no problem whatsoever with having part of the level be a complete no-go. You try and go in there, there's no way you're doing it at a lower ability level. And I'm quite happy with there being areas like on the city streets in the daytime, all the zombies being cakewalk when you're a higher level. That would feel good. But it just wasn't that. I was indestructible. I mean, it was a great power trip, but it kind of got a bit, well, there's no challenge here because I can drop in and
I was
go.
playing Gotham Knights and I did all the side quests first, and then went back to the main
Yeah.
quest. My character's busy telling me how terrifying these things are. I'm like, not so much.
Yeah, and perhaps that's the issue. Game developers want their games to be big, so they fill this large open world. Which I was actually quite surprised the size of the map in Dying Light 2. But you've got this huge, massive world that they want to fill with content for players to do. There were a lot of side quests that were really just fetch quests. Run over here, would you? Fair enough, whatever. But they would level you up, and because I liked just exploring the world and doing this, perhaps there's a way of doing that doesn't impact the main storyline. I don't know. Gamers are going to play a game how they want to play it, and it turns out that my way of playing open world games can ruin the actual main quest of the game.
I mean, I feel like levels as a game mechanic has that problem inherently in it. It's
Mm,
the same in you playing pen and paper games. One of my favorite pen and paper games, Numenera. In fact, all the Cypher System games, Numenera runs on the Cypher
yeah.
System. There's only about 3 levels, but your character isn't powerful because of the levels. They're powerful because of the one-shot pieces of gear that you find throughout the world that have special effects.
Yeah.
And the idea is to encourage the players to always be using these things. So your character's always fresh, always new, always doing cool stuff, but you don't have that weird power creep.
That was interesting. There was an interesting thing about weapons. Weapons were leveled as well, so you'd have seemingly two axes next to one another. One would do 80 damage, and one would do 200 damage. It's like surely the damage comes from the person wielding it, not the weapon. But you do end up, if you explore at all, you end up having to empty your inventory all the time because you're going to carry 24 of these weapons. Most of them are trash because you will keep the two top ones, and that's it.
I mean, I'm
It's
terrible with
interesting.
things like that anyway. Like games that have health potions, I end up hoarding all the health potions
Yep,
and never using them.
I remember vividly, and this is going back. The original Half Life, you get a few high powered weapons towards the end of the game,
Mhm.
and I didn't touch them because I was like, there must be like a really dangerous boss coming up. And then you get to this point where you're picking up ammo for the weapon that you're not using, and then you can't pick up anymore, and you're like, well, perhaps I should be using it.